What's up, guys? Thomas Mott here alongside Josh Davis. Welcome into the Wednesday Link Live. Josh, by my calendar count, we are 34 days from July 23rd. I think that's right. Don't fact check me on that. But 34 days till the Philadelphia Eagles are at training camp, and we have real news to talk about instead of speculation and, asking each other if Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni hate each other. That's kind of been the theme of the week so far, and it's very fun to talk about.
It is because, like you say, there's not a lot, not much else going on. But everybody's gonna have something to talk about. So
Sure.
At least we're getting closer. I don't know exactly the dates myself either, but it sounds right. I'll take your word for it about where we're at as far as training camp goes. It'll be so much better. I do like the fact that without discussing this, we came with a flavor of Kelly Green. So that's kind of cool.
I did notice that. Yes.
Both the vintage Eagles looks.
Well
that's
done.
good vibes there. So yeah, kudos to you. Also, kudos in case someone has not seen. I'm sure they have, but awesome interview with Zach McPherson. That was fantastic. Love that.
Thank you. How about that? Player number one for us, huh? That's he's gonna forever be the first Eagles player I've interviewed, and the first Eagles player of many that we will interview. Which I don't know if we can talk about that. I don't know if we officially. Is it officially official for tomorrow? Can we mention tomorrow or not? What do you want to do?
I mean, I don't know. Like I don't want to jinx
we don't
it.
Jinx
so we'll just
yeah,
tease it that there's something tomorrow. Let's just
say that there's a chance Josh and I are going to have two, or each our own, separate interviews with two other Eagle players if everything goes as we have been told. But you never know. These guys are busy. But there's a chance tomorrow.
Sometimes things happen, but yes.
On both of our separate channels, different people, both on defense, I'll give you that it could happen. So we'll see.
It's a pretty good tease.
Fun.
We won't give it away. Anything other than that. But
there you go. Shake Man said, Thomas, that was such an awesome interview. I appreciate that. It's fun. It's fun to talk to these guys because, again, I don't know how you feel about it, Josh. We're not the media. We're not in press conferences. We're not at practices. We're not making up stories. We basically are the medium in between the media and being fans, where we take what the media gives us, we try and regurgitate it in a way that actually makes a lot more sense, and we try and decipher through a lot of the gunk, because there's a lot of gunk that gets put out there by the media. We'll talk about some of that a little bit later on the show, but it's fun to get the recognition in terms of players, knowing that some of them have watched our show. We've gotten confirmation about that, and it's fun to get the actual Eagle players on the show and asking them real questions and having fun. So yesterday was fun, and tomorrow I think is going to be fun as well. We'll see. That's all we can say, and we got a lot of stuff in the works. When we say like a lot of stuff is in the works, guys, we can't talk about it yet, but yes, it's going to be fun. It's going to be
we'll just put it out there. I mean, case in point, and not to just go off on a tangent here, but appreciate everybody in the chat, see all the comments, everything there. But yeah, I mean, kind of read between the lines. When there's not as much content necessarily being posted, that does not mean that we're not doing things behind the scenes. So just to put that out there, there's lots of cool stuff. But no, kudos to you. Awesome interview. Lots more to come, as you said. And again, it's that I will say this. Look, there's not a whole lot to talk about of legit news, like you mentioned. But when we get the player interviews and the actual insight from the guys themselves, which is fantastic, because as you said, like, we're not a part of the media. It's Eagles content creators that try to deliver the news as much as we can. But still, it's like, hey, we're on the outside looking in, kind of get bits and pieces from other media members. But to hear it from the actual players themselves gets a lot more of a better representation of what's going on the team, inside the locker room, things like that. So always good to get better, I guess, better perspective. Maybe that's the best way to put it. Better perspective, or the right perspective of the team, the players, what's going on there. So that's awesome.
There you go. Someone said, "Is it Jalen Hurts?" No, we'll just say that outright. If we book Jalen Hurts on our show, you guys will know about it, because we'll be as excited as you guys are. I think he would be the hardest by a mile to get on the show, but we have some other good ones planned. Let's just say that.
And if we did get him, if we got Hurts on the show, we would not ask him the whole Sirianni. We wouldn't start the Sirianni drama either.
No, we would not.
Yes, you're right. It would be, hey, here's what's going on. Here's a potential interview.
Did you see, just to because we have to at least talk about it, I mean, the only news truly that came out this week was Howard Eskin on WIP yesterday. And Eskin's interesting, right? Because, I mean, there's a lot of people at WIP, some people like, some people don't like. Eskin obviously is a sideline reporter, so he technically works for the Eagles, even though he's a WIP person, so he's a little bit more plugged in than I would say a lot of the other reporters seem to think that they are. But I'm sure you saw it. Eskin basically said, when Hurts said that the entire offense is 95% different at his press conference, he's wrong. He's lying. It's 20% different. And he's doing that to protect himself in case he stinks this year and the Eagles are going to get rid of him. I thought that was one of the craziest things I've heard in a very long time, to basically say, no, Jalen Hurts, who is in the offensive meeting room, offensive game plan, offensive, has the whole playbook. No, Jalen Hurts is lying that it's not 95% different. It's 20% different. And he's also probably going to get let go if they actually were to go ahead and struggle this season. The whole 20% versus 95% is so ridiculous. In Jalen Hurts' mind, the offense could feel 95% different. There could be enough things in the offense that's 95% different. In reality, it might only be 20% different because he still was running an NFL offense last year. But to say that he's lying and that he's just, trying to protect himself because he hates Nick Sirianni and this and that, crazy. I mean, it was absolutely crazy. And Ohanamin family saying right now, if it's only 20% different, we have issues, which I agree. It's a lot different than what it was last year. It doesn't take a rocket science to know that.
No, for sure, because we were all coming away from the same season, watching the exact same games, going, this is not just a minimal change. Like, we need drastic change here to make something happen. So I'm totally with you on that. It's one of those, again, it goes back to what are we going to talk about? What's going on? There's not a whole lot of news, so we're dragging this thing on. It's ridiculous, the fact, honestly, that it was in February, and then we kind of go into March a little bit, and it dies down. We're like, okay, we're good. We got the coordinators. It comes back up again with a press conference, and here we are, like 2 weeks from him delivering that press conference, the soundbite that gets drug on for a couple weeks because there's really nothing else we could say. There's not other drama going on around the team, so you have to make this bigger than it actually is. It's sure, 95%. I don't even think, honestly, if Jalen himself were to boil it down or get down to the specific details of everything, broad level, is it 95%? To your point, it's an NFL offense. But yes, the nuances and the differences of maybe there's some motion. It could be a very similar or exact same play, but motion is in it. Well, guess what? That is new. Like, everyone can determine or kind of dictate what that means to them. So I don't know. Again, is it a big deal? For one, no, but also like Howard Eskin spinning it and making, oh no, it's 20%. Well, it's like, okay, well, who did he ask? Right? Like, because also I would like to pose a question, like, did you ask a running back? Because the running back, maybe it is 20% different. Did you ask an offensive lineman? Because to an offensive lineman, maybe it's barely any change, right? Because like Stoutland's not changing a whole lot of blocking schemes. Sure, there's some with an outside zone or things like that. But again, it's like, to just automatically take it and go, oh my gosh, Jalen's lying, or Jalen's trying to save face because he's not confident that he's going to be successful. Like, I highly doubt that Jalen Hurts is going in here saying, yeah, I don't know, like, I might not have that great of a season. Like, no, he did say there's a lot to learn. He called it challenging, so that was being honest, but it's also not going in there saying, well, I don't know, we might have a bad season here, so let me just cover my tracks and say, oh yeah, it's 95% different. Like, come on, get out of here with that. That's ridiculous.
It's just crazy. It's crazy the negativity that then kind of just gets thrown out there. It's like, oh, well, now Jalen Hurts is trying to protect himself because he doesn't believe in the rest of the football team, or he thinks Nick Sirianni's a clown, and all these different things to continue to spiral. I said on a show that I was writing and working on today, I probably came out tomorrow morning, but it does feel like the media target, right? It was heavy AJ during the season. Towards the end of the season, it's heavy Nick Sirianni, and it feels like right now it's really heavy Jalen Hurts, and they're just kind of switching, from star to star to star. That way you kind of have someone to, be the scapegoat, someone to yell at, and someone to get upset at. Here's the actual real truth about what the Eagles are dealing with this offseason. There's a lot of new things, not just Kellen Moore's offense. There's brand new coaches everywhere, right? Literally, it is Nick Sirianni and a bunch of new people. Everybody's new. So there's a ton of change going around. And if there truly is one thing that will slow an Eagles quick start, it is the fact that there's a lot of new things to learn. The offense could take a couple of weeks, maybe a month to go ahead and figure out when you actually start playing real NFL games. I've said November is kind of the time when it really needs to start kind of kicking into gear. That's like week 6, week 7 when things start really rolling around. Maybe halfway through the season, you're starting to really, know what's going on. It's going to be difficult, though. And the one thing that is going to tear the Eagles apart is if they listen to the outside media and they all start believing that there are internal problems and that Sirianni and Hurts hate each other and that Kellen Moore doesn't believe in Jalen Hurts and that Vic Fangio doesn't like this. But, that's the only thing that's going to tear them apart right now. But besides the fact that it's going to be probably a little bit of a slower start because of all the new changes. And it's just wild that this is the narrative that continues to be pushed around, and I know that it's Philadelphia, so it's just how it works, and I know that negativity sells way more than us going, the Eagles are great today, and we're like, okay, cool, move on, It's like, show me why they're, in big trouble, but it's just crazy.
Some sort of drama.
It's crazy.
They need some sort of drama, but yes, I totally agree with you there. Shout out, by the way, too. Got the super chat 10 from Jasper Henson. Appreciate that. Says it's crazy how far you and Thomas came. Interviewing Eagles players is a really big step, and I'm proud of both of y'all.
Thank you.
Heck yeah. Appreciate that, Jasper. Also, appreciate all the guesses from everyone else. We're not going to confirm whether or not those are the actual player, but I do appreciate like lots of other players being mentioned here.
They are active players. They're actively on the roster. I saw like Hugh Douglas' name out there.
Good.
They're active players. Yeah,
we got a Nandi Asamoah. Right, terrible spelling cheesesteak.
Can you imagine?
That's what it's going for.
If we had Nandi Asamoah on the show, you'd have to tell him like, Nandi, don't read the comments because there's not going to be a good one. Because
it'd take a lot.
Even Zach, like the comments on Zach's video on the interview yesterday, overwhelmingly positive, and then a couple of people, it's like, bum, cut him, and you're just like, oh gosh, please don't read these. Like, there's no reason to read these. And let me just say this. I know I just interviewed Zach McPherson, and so he came on my show. That's huge for my channel, and the fact that like he did that for me means that I like the guy, and he was really nice before we recorded, after we recorded. Great guy, texting back and forth, setting it all up. I do think, though, he is not guaranteed to be cut. As you look at the Eagle roster and how it's constructed, he almost feels like he has a better chance to be one of the final cornerbacks that makes this roster due to the fact that he was going to move to nickel before his injury anyway, and Eli Ricks is more of a true outside cornerback. I know he played nickel at times because they were desperate last year, but Ricks and McPherson are kind of the two at the bottom of this 6, 7, 8 cornerback stack that they're going to have. And if you do desperately need a nickel behind a Devontae Maddox who gets injured a lot, maybe McPherson has a better chance. He's been in the league a lot longer, and the Eagles invested a 4th-round draft pick in him versus undrafted for, Eli Ricks. So there is an argument for him to be on the roster. There is a chance if he plays well in training camp, he will be on the roster. There are a lot of people who did, again, say that he was going to be cut. That's not by any means guaranteed, and it truly feels like it's open season and open competition for the cornerbacks this year, and they do not care if you're a 4th-round draft pick, a UDFA, you're going to get cut, or you're going to make the roster based on how well you perform in training camp and in the preseason games.
And it's for sure, I mean, you could argue maybe some other position, but to me, it's for sure the biggest, most competition in that position there. You got cornerbacks
easily
galore. I mean, it's so many corners. Who's going to make the roster? You're only going to keep... I think it's 7. I really don't think there's going to be 8 guys. Maybe they shock us and they're like, oh, we got too many guys. We don't want to have any depth issues, and we'll take, we'll sign an extra corner or keep an extra corner to not have enough safeties because Devontae Maddox can move there, whatever. Right. That scares me to death because Devontae Maddox could very well get injured, and then, what are we going to do? But maybe they do. Maybe they say, hey, let's keep 8. I don't know. I could see a world where it's not impossible. And I know you're not saying it's a lock or anything like that for Zach McPherson, but to your point, I mean, the fact that it's on a slot position, maybe he can play his way. It's just, to me, I'm like, Avonte Maddox, Tyler Hall, Cooper DeJean. I mean, you got 3 of them there. You've got 3 to 4 legit. I mean, you probably want 4 outside corners, and that's already 7. So it just makes it super tough, but not impossible coming up from that Achilles injury. And he was, from all reports, again, this is just what we had to go off of, but apparently he was playing well in the training camp, and then obviously in the preseason we saw a couple flashes before he went down with the injury. So who knows? Maybe the actual change get him in that role and he can actually earn a roster spot. But it's a incredible uphill battle. To your point, also Eli Ricks. I don't know. It feels like very unlikely.
Yeah. But
these dudes, whoever it is, whether it's both of them, Josh Jobe. I mean, you talk about all these other players, they're going to get picked up by other teams. Without a doubt, the teams will go, there's the depth. Perfect. Yeah, I mean, they're probably waiting to pounce, honestly. They probably see the depth now and going, perfect, this is great. Like, we'll just keep an eye out on Philly, because as soon as they say, yeah, you're cut, you're not going to be there, then great, we'll try to go pick them up.
And it's going to make preseason games a lot more exciting. I'm telling you, this year, the fact you have a good quarterback in terms of an actual backup quarterback throwing to a lot of good young wide receivers with a bunch of good young cornerbacks on the backside, a bunch of draft picks who are going to play a ton. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is going to play a ton in the preseason, a middle linebacker. That'll be fun to watch. It means a lot more reasons for you guys to go ahead and watch with us as well, because we'll be streaming all of those here on both of our channels. I saw this question here, and I think this is a good one for you, Josh. Ohana Means Family. Would you guys entertain signing Michael Thomas as wide receiver 3 for the right price? I think we're both out on Michael Thomas due to age. You did a show yesterday on Denzel Mims. We're Baylor graduates, so we have a little soft spot in our heart for what was a really good receiver at Baylor and someone who didn't really pan out so far in the NFL. In terms of signing any wide receiver 3, Mims or anybody else, is there any interest there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. No, on Michael Thomas. So we've mentioned him briefly. The age, the injury. It's not that he doesn't have anything left, but
Yeah,
I feel like we want a little bit more of a refresh. And that's not to say, as you're alluding to, and as most people know, like Denzel Mims has not had a successful NFL career
right.
by any stretch of the imagination. He hasn't done very little of anything. But I think you look at if Howie even has a potential appetite for Denzel Mims, he still has the athleticism. So to me, it's kind of a, I know this is not a perfect example or a perfect scenario here to kind of compare this, but you look at like a Shaq Leonard signing last year, that was holding out hope. Maybe he could find something for a
Yeah.
couple games versus you bring somebody in who has some athleticism. And all right, maybe they haven't panned out so far, but could it be the offensive scheme? Could it be the fact that he said Zach Wilson, Sam Darnold throwing to him? Could it
Hmm.
be the fact that he's one of these COVID players? Because, it affects, I think everyone can attest to, but like COVID shook up everyone's world. But also, if you're trying to manage that and
Yeah.
jump into the NFL and adjust to like, this is what life is, that makes it really difficult. So I'm not saying that I expect Denzel Mims to even be signed for one, but then also to make this team. But yeah, if you look at some depth and say, well, we just added John Ross, who hasn't played a football game since
True.
2021, like, all right, you know what? Hey, we watched Denzel Mims at Baylor. He can be good. He has
Hmm.
the athleticism. Question marks, obviously, because he hasn't been able to lead to success in the NFL, but a 4.38, close to a 40-inch vertical. I mean, he could be something. And so if you bring him into camp as an extra body, I mean, it doesn't hurt anything. So
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to signing him and bringing him onto the roster. It's just one of those where, I'm not immediately going, oh, there he is. There's our automatic backup to AJ Brown if he goes down. Like there's still a lot of issues and concerns, but it never hurts to, I guess, check and see, because as I think also it's worth pointing, he was someone who the Eagles were apparently interested in back when they took Jalen Reagor. Even though they
Yep.
took Jalen Reagor, they thought Denzel Mims may be a potential. So how crazy that would have been if you had drafted two wide receivers in that draft, and
Both didn't turn out.
maybe he would have turned out at that point, but they
Maybe.
have not so far. So we can only look back based on that.
Chaz says Mims talked bad about Philly. Wasn't that a pre-draft thing that he was like
Yeah,
Philly, dirty or something like that?
yeah.
At this
He
point in
called
his
it a trash
career,
ass,
yeah, that's what it was. That's
scary
what it
ass
was.
city is what
Yes,
his
trash
comment
ass,
was.
scary
But
ass city. Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, any
But
big
for anyone
city.
who's gone to Waco to Philly, like it's an
True.
adjustment, right?
It's a big
So,
adjustment. At this point in his career, he would love to go to Philadelphia. Let's just say that. He would love to go
very true.
anywhere in terms of big city living and making an NFL roster, because that's, hard to do when you get to this point in your very, very young career. Cranky Cletus says injuries always have secondary always has injuries, need depth. You can keep as many as you can. Talking about the cornerback stuff that we just mentioned.
Hmm.
It's a fair point. I mean, injuries can happen anywhere, but it does feel like secondary has been kind of the Achilles heel with people going down left and right. I mean, last year you had Keely Ringo playing in games he did not really need to be playing in, even though he's kind of our OTA minicamp star, apparently, according to all reports. And then you got, Monte Maddox going down, Josh Jobe getting reps. You're thrusting in a UDFA in terms of Eli Ricks, who played well at times. Latter part of the season in the Niner game, you watch the Cardinal game. It's like, okay, looks like a
Hmm.
UDFA. I do agree, but Josh mentioned 7 corners is probably the number. 8 would be a stretch. You would have to either send like a Ben Van Sumer in, who's probably already going to be on the practice squad. You're going to take less linebackers, take less safety. They're not going to take less offensive linemen or defensive linemen, so you're kind of very thin on where you can take these things. Receiver 5, I don't know if you probably don't keep 6, but a couple will go in the practice squad. This will be the fun of training camp, though. It's no more drama, no more, this rumor about this person hating this person. It's all, what have you done today, right? How did you look on the
Please,
field
yes.
today? That's when it's really going to matter.
That's gonna be, yes, completely refreshing, because like you say, it won't be he said, I guess, in a sense. But
Yeah,
like, some sort of drama and everything there. It's actually, like you say, what you're doing on the field based on reports. It's still, you could say this, it's still speculation, because it's like, hey, they're doing it in practice, it's not
yeah.
games. It's, yes, full speed, but it's still kind of simulated, and it's not actually playing as you would in a regular season game. But you have as much as you can to go off of. You take it for what you will and say, all right, hey, you know what? So and so's progressing, or maybe so and so makes a couple plays.
Sure.
And you're like, all right, hey, they're making a case for themselves to make the roster. So we'll see. That'll at least be the beauty of it. And, as we try to do, break it down as much as possible and keep everybody up to date. But at least it will be a little bit more tangible and realistic stuff, instead of this whole, so and so can't stand this other person, so we don't need any more of that. That was last season. That's the problem. Everybody keeps they I know that you have to have something to talk about, but I would rather just, you know what, hey, like, no news is good news. At this point, no news is good news. And we will be the first to say we love it whenever there's news, because sure, it makes it easy to make content and we can say, hey, here's the storyline and everything else.
Sure.
But we don't love drama that is like, hey, Jalen Hurts hates Nick Sirianni. Like, it's anything that's divisive for the team.
Yeah.
Like, we're fans first. So that's the last thing that we want to happen. And all of a sudden, you have to do it, or the media has to do it, because it's like, well, what are we going to talk about for the next month? Right. It has to be something with Philly. And so I don't know. That's where we're at, but I am excited about the training camp. I am interested, though, because we mentioned Denzel Mims and the possibility of, are the Eagles going to make another move? Will they add somebody? We look at depth acquisitions, things like that. There was kind of floated out there. I think Anthony DeBono was the first one that I saw on this, but Connor Williams, we look at the O-line depth. We feel confident and stout, for one, but if you want to add a potential guy who maybe has something left, you have some veteran experience, a guy who is also familiar with Kellen Moore's scheme, Connor Williams, I mean, you could make a case on a couple different that might make some sense to bring him in there. Curious your thoughts on him. Does he fit well? Would he be worth a look for Stout system based on the guys we have, or just thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they didn't get a good look at Trevor Keegan at all during minicamp or OTAs. I know that he was out there for, a couple of practices that were open to the actual public, and then he was kind of on the sideline with a leg sleeve, so probably a little minor tweak there. It was nothing serious. He's fine. But I do think that Trevor Keegan, whenever you get the pads on, much like a lot of the other young offensive linemen, is where you're really going to learn, could you play guard if we need you to play guard? And Trevor Keegan's a guy, and he's a later round draft pick, but he started 3 straight years at Michigan. He has all the accolades. He has all of the big game prowess that you would want in a Big Ten offensive lineman. And he feels like somebody, size, shape, speed, who, if you needed him week 9 to fill in for a slightly banged up Tyler Steen, he could. Now, again, the only way we're going to find that out is whenever the pads come on and you actually get one-on-one reps, go up against Jalen Carter, go up against, Jordan Davis, go up against Josh Sweat, whatever, right? And then you get 7-on-7s and 11-on-11s, and then you get practices against the Patriots. That's when you're going to find out these things. And it feels like a move for an offensive lineman would only be if they're really desperate. I also think they are serious about Mekhi Becton getting guard reps. Like, it feels like, even though we all kind of assume that he's just the backup tackle, which is fine. I mean, if Lane Johnson or Jordan Mailata goes down, you have a former first-round draft pick ready to roll at left or right tackle. But I do think that they are serious about working him out kind of at guard, just in case Steen doesn't do what you want him to do. Because here's the thing about Tyler Steen. He is a massive unknown. Like, he had a couple of games in 2023, and that was basically it. And you could make the argument he had a couple of nice moments in the Washington Commander game and a couple of poor moments in other places. The Cowboy game, I think, was one, for instance. And although they're saying the right things about him, Josh, all we heard during minicamp and OTAs, Lane talked about him, Mailata talked about him, Stout talked about him, like, he was the guy. But at the same time, being the guy in minicamp and OTAs is very different. Christian Ellis proved that to us this past season. He's got to be the guy week 1 through week 17 and beyond. And if they feel like he's not that guy sometime through training camp, a Connor Williams, a Trevor Keegan, a Mekhi Becton can very much be alive in terms of trying to take that spot away, because it is the lone hole on the Eagle offense, the entire offense, not just the offensive line, that I can find right now.
Yeah, I can totally see it. It makes sense, especially like you say, you've got other pieces in place. You haven't seen a whole lot from it, to the point of, okay, there's some veteran presence there, but also, having that, I don't even know what you necessarily call Mekhi Becton, because initially it was like, hey, swing tackle, but now it's like you could play maybe the guard positions as well. It's like a super hybrid offensive lineman out there, basically just slot him wherever you want to, maybe with the exception of centers. So I don't know. It would be interesting. Thought that got thrown out there, but at the same time too, you look at this squad, there are some unknowns. Tyler Steen, there's hype around him, but that's all it is. We don't know. Hopefully he has taken that next step. As he mentioned, he learned, he grew with his understanding of the offense, playing in the NFL, getting it up to that speed. So it will be kind of the unknown, the wild card as far as the offensive line goes, because what happens there at right guard. And to your point, at least there is that depth of, maybe if it's not going well, you perhaps put in Mekhi Becton, see if that happens. Or if you have a Trevor Keegan, you feel good about him, possibly he gets some reps, or maybe even you start him on that side. Or Tyler Steen could work out. They'd obviously drafted him for a reason. And at least he had some time to learn. He wasn't really thrust in to play too much. He did have a start, another game of servicing as a backup coming in. So I don't know. I'm interested to see that. That's one of my concerns. Remo here says, though, another edge rusher would be nice. I'm a little concerned about that spot. I
don't hate that.
It's a lot of maybe guys. There's not a lot of proven success there. So I don't know. Question would be who. I mean, another
There's
edge
not
rusher
a lot of edge
nice,
rushers.
but that's who do you want?
Maybe Hassan Reddick whenever the Jets cut him because he doesn't want to play for them. I mean, how about
possibly? Yeah. And then he's like, all right, fine. I'll come back and play for 1 year.
Sure.
Sign me to a 1 year contract.
I don't know if it's his agent or if it was him, but that whole thing is a mess. Promising the Jets he was going to play without a contract, which seemed so strange that he would promise that. Feels like something the Jets would just leak just to make themselves look a little better in the actual situation. I don't know. I'm kind of glad we're done with the headache, but you did a really, really good show last night. If you haven't watched it yet on Josh's channel, the Philly Special Show, for those watching on my channel. I assume most people watching right now are subbed to both channels, but talking about how Bryce Huff is Howie Roseman's big gamble of the offseason. And he is. Some people want to say it's Saquon Barkley. It's not. Bryce Huff is the biggest gamble because everybody else the Eagles got is basically unanimously loved. I mean, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, all the rookies, bringing in even these wide receiver 3 options in free agency like a Paris Campbell. Saquon, people all feel like Saquon was a good deal for $13 million a year at this point. Christian McCaffrey 2.0 maybe, I mean, it was a little high, but Bryce Huff is the massive question mark, and they didn't talk a lot about Bryce Huff during minicamp and OTAs because the pads aren't on, but he wasn't one that was, bowling over offensive linemen like Jalen Carter did. So
true.
It's a big question mark, and your show yesterday really highlighted that. That was well done.
I appreciate that. Yeah. I was curious too, because I was sitting there thinking, like, among all the signings, and, as we do, and case in point, because I know both of us are the same way here, but we go through and read the vast majority, if not all the comments, the vast majority of the comments. And so we do hear and see, and the one consistent one that I got from almost every single show, certainly during OTAs, was like, what's going on with Bryce Huff? Why have we not heard about him? Anything there? And, again, like you just said there, they're in pajamas, as Bobby King alludes to. They're not doing a whole lot. And even when they are matched up against Lane Johnson some, or even Mailata on the other side, it's hard to make some noise. It's hard to get noticed there. That's understandable. But like you say, I can understand a case being made. Okay, hey, Devin White, like there's a little bit of a risk there, but okay, some potential on that side. A Zach Bond, things like that. There are guys that are unknown, but it's not to the level of you paid a lot of money, not crazy money. Let's just say that it was a good deal for Bryce Huff because he's not top of the line. He's not paying $25 million for Hassan Reddick, but it is a gamble to go, all right, 4 straight years of 10+ sacks to say Bryce Huff has done it for 1 season and he's been a situational pass rusher. Now you want him to play in a Vic Fangio scheme where Vic's going to ask him to play, 50% of the snaps? I know we don't typically see high numbers for Philly pass rushers, but like Fangio prefers that in his system. And so that will be the question mark. Can his conditioning hold up? I'm excited about Bryce Huff, but still, we talk about rotational pass rush as well. Like, Nolan Smith, yes, I believe that he can live up to his expectations. We haven't seen enough from him. He didn't get enough reps either to prove that. Shoulder should be healthier. We've talked about it a number of times, but, everybody loves BG. How long can he keep going? This is his last year, presumably, and as he's kind of alluded to, but it's like, even still, he's so far up there in age. Is he able to give you 4 or 5 sacks? Can he still be productive when he's on the field? Josh Sweat, there's so many unknowns there, but again, that's where I felt like Bryce Huff is one of those that he's the. I think the way that I phrased it was that he unlocks the Eagles pass rush, and I got some that agreed, and then some people that kind of fire back and go, no, what are you saying? Like Jalen Carter's the one. I agree that Jalen Carter is the best defensive lineman. Sure. He's your best defensive player. You build everything around him. But Jalen Carter can only do so well if he's not double teamed or triple teamed. And that's where I think if Bryce Huff is dominant, then automatically it unlocks the Eagles pass rush because you can't hone in on Jalen Carter. So I don't know. We will see. But I think that's going to be super telling because as you've talked about too on some shows with Vic Fangio's defense, it's like he's not going to bring the pressure a ton. He will occasionally,
right?
But it's going to be asked on, hey, there's your pass rush. It's your 4 guys that you're rushing, maybe 5 if you have someone who you're sitting on that side. But go get the quarterback. Put pressure on the quarterback. Do something because we're dropping back in coverage. And if it's successful, that's great. We're going to see changes. I think we believe that we will see that this season. But case in point is going to be made by how does Bryce Huff and how does the rest of the pass rush get home?
Yeah, Yeah, I agree. I see the super chat here. I'll get that in a second. No, let's do the super chat first. Then I saw a non-super chat I want to get to. James Carver with a 20 said, study wide receiver this weekend.
Let's
Surprise
go.
Smitty was number 4 slot wide receiver in 22 and 6th in 23, as well as AJ top 8 last 2 years. Ross or Wilson, maybe Paris, or trade for Mechie, Mims, etc. Wide receiver heavy team like Texans most likely. You've done shows on Mechie because, of course, the wide receiver extremely heavy Texans getting Stephon Diggs, which makes sense. But it's hard to part with a guy like Mechie because he's on such a cheap rookie contract. So I think it's a little more unlikely than I think both of us would like. But I do think the whole Smitty and AJ in the slot is something that is going to be completely unleashed. I think we both have done shows about this in the past couple of weeks. The idea that last year, and I talked about this on Jacob Sports. We can talk about that interview in a second here. Last year, the Eagles had the 8th best offense in the National Football League. Statistically, you looked at it on paper, and it tells you this is the 8th best offense. But if you used your eyeballs and you watched week 12 through 17, your eyeballs said this is not the 8th best offense in the National Football League. And the main issues were situational football and the type of routes that were called. There were either like a 3rd down and 10, 5-yard stops, 5-yard out route, like routes that had no business going past the line to gain, even though it's 3rd down and 10. And then you had 3rd down and 3s, Josh, where you got 4 receivers and you're basically running 4 verticals on Madden. I mean, there's a little bit of a post here from the slot guy, but never are you moving AJ into the slot. Never are you moving Smitty into the slot. It's very, very rare to see them situationally be there where they're trying to take advantage of matchups. And that's what Kellen Moore's offense is built to do. Give you matchups. Give you A.J. Brown versus the 4th best cornerback on the Dallas Cowboys. Give you Devontae Smith versus the third best safety in a dime package or whatever it is, and give them one-on-one opportunities while also showing Jalen Hurts exactly what defense he's going to get pre-snap because motion's flying past him and, defenses are adjusting. So I think that receivers can dramatically benefit in this offense with Kellen Moore. They can be fantastic this year. It's going to be very hard not to draft Devontae Smith or A.J. Brown in the first round if you have, the 8th overall draft pick in your fantasy league and all the running backs are gone. But you might have to because they might really feast even in a very, very crowded offense.
They totally might. And also, your AJ breakdown was phenomenal. I think you had a short that followed that up as well. But like saying he very well could be, not to discredit Justin Jefferson, but he very well could be the best wide receiver. As crazy as that sounds, even in this ridiculous of an offense, could be the best receiver because if you're moving him around, he was dominating based on just, hey, AJ, go beat your matchup one-on-one. Like there's very little scheme to it. Yes, he's running his route, but it's just kind of like, all right, he's going to use his physicality. He's going to use his athleticism and just make sure he wins. Now you put him in a system where it maximizes that. The sky is the limit. So I'm excited to see that. Also, a little plug because you mentioned it, but we will have a fantasy football league. So for those out there that are going to be doing that, this is much more to come on that. We're not there yet. We got a ways to go. But for those that will be interested,
who won our fantasy football league this past year? Who was the overall winner of that one?
I don't know. I'm not really sure who that was.
Yeah, I
don't
know who that was. I know who that was.
Some people say it was rigged.
Some people say your team was so loaded.
It was. We did 2 in my defense.
Separate drafts. Yeah.
Yes, separate drafts. One dude took like 7 or not 7, but I think 4 defenses in the first 6 rounds. So
it's a problem.
There were guys that were falling that should not have fell at that point. And then I got Raheem Mostert in the 10th round. It was crazy. So the fact that he took off, and then I picked up Kyron Williams. So it was just timing and getting some guys. But
there you go. Keisha WHT. I like watching you, Thomas. I like watching you on Bird 365. How you kind of silenced John, I guess is what that's saying. Especially when he explained the situation with Jalen and Nick. Keep it up. I wasn't trying to silence anybody, but the Birds 365 interview was fun. We don't get to be on a lot of shows. Listen, we do get asked to be on shows. A lot of shows we turn down. It's certain how much time we have on our hands, and do you want to go talk for an hour about something? But the Jacob Media one was the night before. Do you want to go on? And I was sure. And then 30 minutes. There's no prep. You do not know what they're going to ask you, and it's a very good test of your ability to defend what you believe about the Philadelphia Eagles. I had a blast on there with the guys, and the comments seemed to enjoy it, and it was a good time. It's fun. Josh is going to do it soon too. I'm very sure they will have Josh on very, very soon.
We'll see. It would be a blast, but I did enjoy that. Yeah, getting the comments and everything else because it's interesting because you wonder okay, is there any interest or are they seeing things and everything else? But then whenever you got on there, it's all right, yeah, you're to ask some questions, getting your take on Jalen Hurts. I can appreciate also my main takeaway or the biggest one that I saw was John McMullen saying and love John. Love all the
Sure.
content. We appreciate
Sure.
everything. We have shows about everything that he writes and stuff like that. So
Yes.
totally. But we can agree to disagree. His comment of Saquon Barkley not being a special player, I was
Yeah.
like,
That was a
I
good one.
get the argument that you're
Yeah.
trying to make there. So I appreciated the defense and what you were saying. You brought up a fantastic point too, which he agreed with, but it was like, okay, understandably he's had some injuries, but also he hasn't had this type of team.
Yeah.
And situationally, like you said, situationally, he is a special player. Like DeAndre Swift, he's good. Miles Sanders is good. Don't get me wrong. They benefited greatly from an offensive line, but I was in agreement with you as far as Saquon Barkley. I think most people he's
I
a
think most
special
people
player.
are too. I think there are plenty of people who do look at Saquon Barkley and go, "We're not going to get that one great year of Saquon Barkley," and that's fair. We might not,
Sure.
but when you actually just again go straight down to what the actual player is, Saquon Barkley is leagues better than DeAndre Swift and Miles Sanders in terms of the upside that he brings. And I know when we first signed Saquon Barkley, we all kind of went, "Whoa, $13 million for a running back," and then you kind of sit back and you look at the way we've kind of maneuvered the cap the past couple of years and how Howie's locking up all these top players for, way less than what they actually deserve. Devontae Smith, Jalen Hurts is now the fourth highest paid quarterback. You go,
crazy.
$13 million. Like $13 million is not a lot of money if Saquon Barkley does turn out to be DeAndre Swift, but he gives you a couple of big explosive plays a game. It always felt like Swift and truly Miles Sanders as well, they'd have big runs, but their big runs were 10 to 30 yards, right? Like, every now and then, 5-yard gain, 15, 5-yard, 3-yard, 20. Feels like Saquon can give you a 10, 20, 60, 50. Like, he's going to have the home run ability. And I don't know of a defense that was truly very scared of DeAndre Swift the entire year. Maybe we didn't just run him enough. Besides watching those first couple of games against the Minnesota Vikings, really, I think a little bit against the Tampa Bay Bucks in week 3, they just didn't really use him, and it's going to be hard to ignore Saquon Barkley this year from a run game perspective. Very hard to
Completely.
ignore.
Yeah. We've mentioned it a couple different times, but it's like they're not going to be able to ignore it. So it's a pick your poison. But also, we look back at last season, and DeAndre Swift, I think, no discredit to it. Like, he played well. He deserved it. He deserved to go to the Pro Bowl, things like that. But he benefited greatly, especially early in the year when there was a potential threat of, hey, Jalen Hurts might run. So first off, there was that. Then Jalen Hurts, the injury is like, okay, maybe he's not the same player. But also it started to progress because the first few weeks, it's every team filling it out of like, okay, is this what we're seeing similarities from the Eagles, but is this the exact same offense? Like, it looks like the same offense. And then they figured it out, obviously. I mean, San Francisco just absolutely broke the Eagles. But it was like you slowly get there, and then teams are, okay, yeah, you know what? It's not even a question. We know when the football is going to DeAndre Swift here. The holes were not near as big from the blocking scheme. All of a sudden, you're not able to get anything on the ground game or the passing attack. And it was all out of sorts. So like I say, you got yards at times because it was still, a decent offense based on the numbers. But like we all saw, it was one of those where, cool, the scripted version of the offense could be good for a first drive or for a first quarter. But then after that, it's like, well, all bets are off. Like, who knows what's going to happen there? So it'll be drastically different. And I agree with you. Saquon Barkley is a game changer because automatically, and hey, right, wrong, or indifferent, whether Saquon's having really solid numbers or not, the defense knows Saquon Barkley. Like, that's just what it is. Defenders game planning for it. I don't care if Saquon hasn't put up good numbers. If we go through the first 3 weeks of the season and it's like, man, Saquon's not doing great. The defense is game planning for Saquon Barkley because they know that he's a home run threat anytime he touches the ball. So it's still going to have that benefit factor, especially with the offense. So should be good.
Shorty's dad said, did you guys go to school for journalism or sports management or something, or you just started? Have we ever told the story of what we did in school? Because maybe we have, maybe we haven't.
I mean,
I don't even remember.
Think maybe it's been so long though.
It has been long. It has been long. Josh was a junior, right? When I was a sophomore? Because Josh was a junior at Baylor when I was a sophomore. And Josh was already working at the school newspaper, the Baylor Lariat, as a sports writer, I believe. Are you a journalism major? What was your actual useless degree?
It was comm specialist. So it was a hybrid journalism.
We have the exact same.
Yeah.
We have the exact same.
Film and digital media and journalism.
That's right. That's right. And then, of course, I randomly got an email end of my freshman year saying, you should apply to be on the Baylor sports or the Baylor broadcasting TV program that we're just starting. I don't know who put me on that list to this day, and I applied and got the job. And then Josh and I were in the same newsroom all the time. Found out we were both Eagle fans, but he was still older, so we didn't hang out a bunch at Baylor because Josh was graduating and I was just getting started. So we'd see each other at work because we technically were employed by the Baylor newspaper. And then that's how we became friends. And then Josh went and did the Baylor New York program. He worked for Fox Sports, and then 2 years later, I went to the New York program and did an internship there for Fox Sports as well. So we basically had very similar college careers, and then you went into radio, I went into radio, and then we both got out of radio because radio sucks, and, that's kind of how it is. So
yes. So it's kind of then come full circle because we would text all the time.
Yes.
Just about Eagles games. So it was funny because we wouldn't really communicate a whole lot, but then it'd be like Eagles game on a Sunday, and I would text you.
Very true.
Then out of the blues, though, it was kind of a joke. And you're like, hey, if the Eagles win, like we should probably go, or if they get to the NFC Championship, we should probably go, right? And I kind of halfway jokingly said yes too, because I was like, yeah, sure, we should,
right.
But like, is it going to happen? Probably not, because we just come off of the 9-8 season, the bad playoff loss. I was like, yeah, it's not, but sure, why not? If it does, then obviously, whenever you were at the divisional game, and what it was like. The blowout. I forgot what the score was at half. It was a complete blowout because you texted and said like, buy the tickets now, and it's like, all right, we're doing this. So yeah, it's crazy. It is. Let's just say it is absolutely crazy to be here at this point, but having a blast.
James Carver with another 10 as a 2X Texas Tech grad. Does that mean two degrees, or there's like you and your wife? I'm not sure. I think it means 2-time graduate of Texas Tech, right? Am I wrong about that?
I believe so. I know that he's got some other family members of Aggies, so I won't hold that against James, even though. But
I love your McPherson interview. Wish you'd asked if he thought about working out at safety for versatility. How about discuss offline? Thanks, guys. No, did not discuss offline about safety. Didn't ask about safety. It feels like Philly would have really mentioned that as a thing if they actually want him to try out for safety, which would have made sense from a depth perspective. But the whole nickel thing seems to be what he's buying into. It seems to be his whole plan on in terms of making this roster. And listen, being a nickel cornerback in the NFL, there are not very many that specialize as good nickels, right? Everyone wants to be an outside cornerback. It's where the money is. You could be a journeyman nickel cornerback and kind of gets moved back and forth. But if you become a true, really good nickel cornerback, even like Avonte Maddox did, you're not going to make a ton of money, but you will be in the league for a long time, and the money does compound. You're making $2, $3, $4, $5 million a year for 6 years. You can do the math, and it adds up there. So did not discuss that. I will say the interview, and this was, I told Josh, because at the beginning of the show, we mentioned it. We don't want to, jinx anything, but Josh might be interviewing an Eagles player tomorrow. I have one scheduled for tomorrow. But my tip for Josh was, and again, my tip, because I'm so experienced having one Eagle person on my show.
I'll take the tips.
But the tip was, I texted today, confirm what time zone, because I assumed that Zach was in Philly like an idiot. And so I say 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. Let's record, or just a.m., And then it's 10:30 a.m. Eastern time, and he's not joining the call. And I'm like, okay, great, I'm getting stood up. And then I text him one more time, and he's like, bro, my bad, I'm in Houston. So time zones are important, but he was finishing up rehabs. We talked about that.
Okay.
Live, so
there you go. Yeah. That's what I was going to say, because I think whenever you texted me as well, I was like, he could be, because he went to Tech. I was like, he could be in Texas.
He was.
So I was like, I wasn't sure timing, but yes, it always throws me off though, because too many times it's like, hey, let's just go ahead and, even ours, quite honestly, because we're Eastern and Central. Yeah. And sometimes I have to make sure every single time to do it, because if not, it'll be like, oh wait, is that 7 your time? Is that my time? So it's always change it. But yes, I appreciate that. We're confirming, so we'll make sure we're good.
Yeah. I did find his answer, because I asked him about Bradberry, and I was basically trying to see if this whole Bradberry to safety thing is kind of like a facade. It's like, hey, he's going to be a safety, wink, wink, we want to trade him. His answer to me, and again, he was sharp. Whenever I asked him about the collapse last year, you could tell he thought about what his answer was supposed to be and gave me a very good by-the-book answer on, not really revealing what the actual issue was, which I kind of assumed, but to be able to do that without knowing the question was coming is fantastic. But his answer on Bradberry seemed very, very genuine. If you go back and watch the interview, he says, basically we found out in meetings that they were going to try him out there. Bradberry himself told us they were going to try him out there. Bradberry seems to be, liking it and fitting in well at safety and looking good at safety, which I thought was interesting. Like, how many times have we seen him at safety, or did they see him at minicamp? And then he said he's still going to do some cornerback as well. So it was not necessarily a full position change based on what McPherson's told me yesterday. It was more like, we're going to try it out, but he could go back to cornerback. It's interesting to see how they're going to do this whole Bradberry's a safety, but maybe he is actually not like a real safety in terms of his final position. I don't know. I thought that was interesting.
I will be curious to see because that is one of those that, it's like, all right, he maybe he moves to safety. Maybe he tries to play corner. This could be the Eagles salvaging something if there's any way possible to trade him there. It's just I can't. Maybe we're all just so far off. We missed the mark and we're just dead wrong. Like James Bradberry figures out a way to stay on this roster, but I just can't envision it. I'm sorry, but like every single time we talk about it, there's so much depth in the secondary here. And I know it's just one year, and some people are going up. James Bradberry, he could return to his All-Pro level, or just not even, just a quality level. But you got so many guys there. I mean, Keely Ringo taking the next step, Isaiah Rodgers taking that step, not showing any rust. Quinell Mitchell, obviously, you draft Cooper DeJean. So I just think it's almost impossible to see him get on the field. And, safety, understandably, if you're trying to make something happen. But we've mentioned it several different times, and the fact that just the idea of trying to rely on James Bradberry to make a tackle gets me, a little bit anxious on that. Like, I don't know that I want James Bradberry there to make a tackle as a safety. So, who knows? But yes, it was insightful, and that's what I can appreciate, because we don't get as much of that. We could just say from, little clips or pieces of like Nick Sirianni saying, "Oh yeah, James Bradberry is going to move to safety," or "We're going to try him out there." We might think that he's going to be, good on that side. But to hear from a player who is in those regular meetings and saying, "Yeah, Bradberry let us know possibility. He's going to be doing some of both, the hybrid there. He likes it." It's good to get that extra insight. So we will see. It'll be one of those camp battles. Does he make it all of training camp? Is there a trade that comes on? It feels like, I will say this, it feels like every single day. And naturally, again, we bring up the, like, what are you going to talk about this time of year? But it seems like every single day there's a James Bradberry trade to the Falcons possibility. James Bradberry trade to the Jaguars possibility. It's like, just throw out any other team that you want, because someone's going to bite on it. It's like, all right, is James Bradberry getting traded? Is it this time finally going to happen?
Yeah.
So
I basically stopped. I mean, I'll mention those, like Bleacher Report suggests this trade to the Philadelphia Eagles, and I'm kind of getting tired of it, because it just, especially with Bradberry, it's like this headline is just meant to make me click, and yet when you click on the video or you click on the actual article, he's not being traded to the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's some random sports writer who has to meet his quota for June 19th and go, give me like a trade scenario. It's like, oh, well, what about the Jacksonville Jaguars? Here's 4 reasons why the Jaguars make sense. And you're like, please stop. Like, please stop. And they don't stop, because, people got to make their deadlines. So it is what it is. Very fun.
About something.
Very fun.
It is. Yes. Yeah.
All right. We'll do a couple more questions here and then wrap up, as we're getting close to an hour. It's gone by very, very quickly. I saw one. Ringo looks like a beast. All of a sudden, the secondary is very full. Very excited to see what Keely Ringo is going to do. Very excited to see how much Keely Ringo plays in the preseason. That's going to tell you what they think of him truly. If they're selling us this whole idea that Ringo is like the guy this year, and then he doesn't play in the preseason, that's going to be your indicator that they truly believe he's like QB or cornerback 2 behind Darius Slay. But if they throw Ringo out there for a quarter each preseason game, then it's like, hey, we like what we see. We got to see some, actual game tape of you doing this before we let you, just run wild with the keys to the castle. So he's going to be one to really keep an eye on, because AJ won't play, Smitty won't play, a lot of the offensive linemen, Jalen will probably play very, very little. Like, there's going to be Saquon's not going to play in the preseason. A lot of defenders are going to play in the preseason. You're going to see a lot of guys out there. Devin White should play in the preseason. Zach Bond will for sure play a ton in the preseason. I mean, it's going to be all hands on deck for the preseason. I'm excited to see a lot of our starters get a lot of reps.
It'll be good. Like you say, we'll get a better picture of, okay, here's some potential guys, or do they have a front runner on the position?
Yeah.
Yes, to your point. I mean, if he won't, but if Saquon Barkley were for some reason out there, it would go like, what, Sirianni, I'm sorry. I know that you don't have a whole lot of control, apparently these days, or not a lot of responsibility maybe, but that should be an automatic. You have Jeffrey and Howie immediately get on the phone like, hey, get him out of there. We did not pay money for Saquon Barkley to be in a preseason game, so he's not going to play there. I don't know. It's one of those that, like, to me, I'm interested also within joint practices, because preseason for sure, that'll tell us a story. Like you said, if they're playing quarters, that's all that you need to know. It's like, okay, well, they're not good enough as opposed to shockingly, surprisingly last year, Reed Blankenship. I didn't expect him to be like, hey, we're not playing Reed. Right. He's
Yeah.
just going to sit out every
Right.
single. That was surprising, but we'll probably have a few of those of, okay, hey, so-and-so's not playing. There you go. That's your guaranteed starter. But who will be the players at maybe a joint practice, right? Because it's still not full bore, but it's in between. It's more than a training camp session, but it's also less than maybe a preseason full speed tackling. But are there some players that maybe you're matching up on those? Like who gets the first team reps? If it's a consistent, just about every single day, hey, here's 7-on-7, here's 11-on-11, here's the guys that are getting first team reps, then, you'll start be able to read between the lines. But again, if we're getting, insert whoever, Keeler Ringo, Isaiah Rodgers, Quinyon Mitchell, and they're just like rotating, oh, they got a quarter, then it'll truly tell you like, all right, hey, Fangio's got this as a complete competition here. There is not a for sure starter on anyone, and see who it's going to be next to. I wouldn't be surprised if Slay age and just his ability and what he's already proven, if he just goes ahead and sits out like a number of other starters. But for that second cornerback spot, it'll be interesting to see who that one ends up being.
Underdog 17, should we make a trade for Trey Hendrickson from the Bengals, seal up that D line? I'd love Trey Hendrickson. Trey Hendrickson wants top 5 pass rusher money. He wants the Reddick contract. And if you weren't going to pay Reddick, then you're not going to pay Trey Hendrickson. It just doesn't make any sense. So, that
can you
is
imagine if that did happen? I mean, like, look,
nuts.
Like you said, he's a great pass rusher.
Mm-hmm.
He's right up there at the very top, so he deserves that type of money. But could you imagine how that would be received for Howie Roseman of, whoa, hang on. You just paid Trey Hendrickson and you did not pay Hassan Reddick there. Like, no my gosh, he would totally hear it.
Libby W says, once I found your channel, there's no need for me to react to clickbait. I'll wait for your news. Thanks for the channel with integrity. We appreciate that. We've been working on that.
There you go.
Clickbait's fun to do because you guys click on it. But, at the same time, what's it worth if you click on it and you go, this isn't real, and then you hate us for it. So, we're trying to stand out above the rest. There's a lot of clickbait out there. A lot. So, is what it is.
Fair enough. There's I did see a comment. This is just more of comical, but it made me laugh as you were talking. So James Angelus, I think is how I say the last name, but he said, mentioning Terrell Lewis, he said we should sign the escort who chased him. She had the burners on, telling this man. See, that's one of those that you cannot play in the show. So like I brought up the topic.
I saw you bring it up. I was surprised.
Because I was like, but like, there's absolutely no way I'm playing the video for reasons that people understand if you've watched the video. But like, it's crazy because there are lots of comments, and similar to that, that was probably the most common stance of like, hey, we should sign her because she was right there with Terrell Lewis. Look,
he's gonna get
crazy,
ripped
weird,
in the locker room
story, but for sure, that's one of those that you can only imagine. Just golly.
Jamar Davis, Will Shipley a lot in the preseason, probably a lot more than a lot of the draft class. Yes, Shipley is going to be doing a lot in the preseason for sure.
Potentially RB2.
And again, if he plays well enough, for sure, it's going to be a lot of fun.
He could be. I know that who was it? I think Philly 500. Like from the second that he got drafted, was like, oh, he's RB2. Like get Gainwell out of there. I know there's a lot of Kenny G.
Hate.
Maybe hate is it feels too strong, but it's fair. There's a lot out there. It's not for me like a Kenny G hate, but it is we've seen quite a bit of.
We've seen enough.
The inconsistencies. We've seen enough. Sure. We do remember playoff Kenny, but it's been so long, and also just the decisions or the lack of the quality decisions that have been made. So it's like, you know what? If Will Shipley could go in there and he's got that motor and he's actually willing to put in the time and effort and energy. And I mean, also, I think the big thing is pass blocking. So if a lot of people will be doing this, but if you're watching a preseason game, you probably aren't just an average NFL fan. Let's just say that. So you probably already understand this, the people that are here hanging out. But I would say maybe even more so. Yes, he needs to make a few plays in the run game or the passing game, but just watch his pass blocking ability. If Jalen's or not Jalen, I shouldn't say Jalen. If Kenny Pickett's getting hit or if Tanner McKee's getting hit because Will Shipley's not blocking, then that's not a great sign. He may not get that RB2 spot, but if he's able to hold up in protection when blitz is coming or things like that, then all of a sudden that would be the biggest case for me to say, I mean, what else? Yeah. What other reason do you have to keep Kenny Gainwell as your RB2? Because I don't think you do.
Yeah, it's a great point about pass blocking from running backs. One reason why DeAndre Swift was not in there as much as he should have been, he could not pass block at all. Kenny G was a much better pass blocker, especially on third down. And it's still a throwing league. Like, you want the Eagles to be balanced this year. Look at the 49ers being very balanced with Christian McCaffrey. But at the same time, you've got to be able to block the free blitzers, especially coming up the middle when it's one-on-one against a linebacker, and you got to take a hit, and it's not fun. That's why people don't like doing pass blocking, because it is awful. It's not like, you're a right tackle, you immediately get hands-on, there's not a massive collision. There's still a big one, obviously. But when you have a free blitzer coming up the A-gap, and you're 5 yards back, staying next to Jalen Hurts, and it's like, okay, time to stand there and try to stab this guy, it's not a good time. And Kenny G has done that consistently throughout his career, so credit to him. Credit to him for that.
It's true. And Rashad Penny did not, which is also another reason why.
Another reason.
It's one of the. It's not the only reason, but it's one of the probably main reasons.
Terrible at it.
They saw that in the second. I think was it week 2? I think it was week 2. He got in for like one drive, and there was 2 times. It was the hold. Jalen. I think it was a touchdown to AJ, right? It was a touchdown to AJ or to Smitty, I think. And yeah, Rashad like blow by, tackle him basically, flag, and you're like, all right, that's enough. We won't see him again. I don't think we saw him again till the Dallas game in Dallas, I believe. That was never again.
Low Key celebrates 3 months of membership. Super Bowl or not, I'm ready to shut everybody up. It'd be fun. Although, even if we go to a Super Bowl and win, there will still be plenty of negative stuff happening. I just can only imagine. Okay, let's just wrap with this. The Eagles are not going to be undefeated this coming season. They're probably not getting to 14 wins. It's very hard to, right? 12 wins, they're still going to have plenty of losses, and there are still going to be plenty of weeks where people just mash the panic button. And as long as the Eagles don't play themselves out of contention early and lose a bunch of games, you're 1-4, you're 2-5, and really get behind the 8 ball, 4-3, 5-3, 6-4, 7-3, whatever the number is, they are going to have time to get this thing right and figure it out. And I do think by November, that's my magical month, they really start kind of, getting all the little wheels to start turning in the right direction, and then the offense really opens up and the team starts looking really good. So just expect a slow start is truly what I would say, and expect a lot of media-made drama when the slow start happens, and it will be completely unavoidable. Just be ready for it.
Yeah. I've tried to set expectations kind of similarly. Again, I understand there's a few, there's maybe even several out there of comments like, no, we're going to be good from the beginning. And maybe we are. That would be fantastic. But it's also, to your point, you have some changes, offense, defense, the coordinators, unknowns at several different player positions too. It's like it could be a slow build, and then all of a sudden you get rolling and have some better momentum. At least the schedule is fairly okay to begin with. If you can get into the bye week, say at like a 4-1 or something, you could even be 5-0. But even if you get like a 4-1, hey, that's great. 4-1, get the bye week. Make sure to shore up some other things. Go on a good run. The end of the season works out very well, especially with the travel schedule, even for the road games. So it should be good. But excited for that. By the way, hey, there's Anthony. What's up?
There he is. There's
the guy. Mr. DeBona himself.
The guest of the Josh Davis show. That is, or I guess you say the Philly Special show. That is guest number 1. It's good stuff, though. It's great. I mean, an hour-long show, and people eat those things up. I mean, those people love those shows. They love them. It's like every weekend. It's like, here's an hour show from Josh, 40,000 views. They love it. They absolutely love it. It's good stuff.
As much as possible, we try to. So shout out to Anthony, because like I say, everybody knows that, and obviously it in the comments. But
have you noticed that Anthony is
incredibly
almost
insightful?
He's almost always right, like in terms of Twitter. And I think he does a great job of like pointing back to tweets he made 2 months ago. And he's like, remember when I said they should sign this guy? Oh, look, they signed that guy. He's very, very seldomly wrong with his takes on the Eagles. It's very impressive. It
is incredibly impressive. And he knows, though, that I'll bring this up because I usually try to like bait on several of those. He did get it incredibly wrong on the Saquon Barkley signing. So it's a freezing cold take. Actually, I think they retweeted him because he was saying that it was a very, very, very unlikely chance of signing Saquon Barkley. But to your point, before actually the first time that I had him on, I was curious. I was like, this guy has some extra insight in the Eagles somehow, because he'd predict stuff and it would actually happen. So yes, shout out to Anthony. Great work. Got a lot of different Eagles content. Even when we say there's not a whole lot going on, I can appreciate, because Anthony's got articles on the best quarterbacks in Eagles history, the best trades, everything else. So go check out Anthony's content if you're not already.
PFN.
See, there you go. See, except Saquon Barkley. We won't talk about that.
Hey, if you get retweeted by Freezing Cold Takes, you have had a really, really good take. Because I had it happen once when I said right before the NFL draft 2 years ago the Eagles would not trade for A.J. Brown. They immediately traded for A.J. Brown, and I got Freezing Cold Take. And the Freezing Cold Take account responded, Rare Mott L, which was kind of interesting. It's like how do they know that a lot of people call me by my last name, and yet they said Rare Mott L? Very interesting in terms of that. They must be watching. But if you get Freezing Cold Take, it's fun. I think it's very fun.
It's a worthwhile miss. We'll just say that. Yes, that's great.
All right, we're going to wrap things up here as we are literally at 59 minutes and 30 seconds. So that's about as good timing for an hour as possible, as we only really go about an hour, especially during the offseason. Josh is a father of 2 under 3, or 2 really under 2. So Josh has a very busy life outside of talking about the Eagles with me on a live show. So I am childless at the moment with my new bride. So once I told Josh today,
never a dull moment.
Once I do have a kid, it's going to be running to Josh with how to balance work-life balance. But we're not at that point yet. So one day.
Yes, for sure. And I've said this to you a number of times, but don't rush into anything. When y'all are ready,
we're not.
That's great.
Right.
Enjoy it. It'll be fantastic. But yes,
sure.
It is never a dull moment, and always just at this point, I should say nothing catches me off guard. But for a long time, it would be like, oh yeah, this will be the plan, whatever. Or this will be the schedule. It's like, no, there's pretty much no schedule these days. So, but it's all good stuff. So appreciate that. Appreciate everybody in the chat hanging out. Anthony for swinging by. So
yep.
Everybody else there. We got some other content. Stay tuned. Like Thomas said, those interviews, fingers crossed, we won't officially confirm. It should be happening. So stay tuned for those.
Knock on wood. All right, we'll see you guys in the next one. For Josh Davis, I'm Thomas Mott. Signing off. We'll see y'all on our shows recorded during the week and our next live show on Wednesday of next week. See you guys.
There you go. Go Birds.
Oh.